If your quest for longevity feels overwhelming, here's some good news. It starts with one simple daily habit. MitoPure gummies from Timeline. They're the first ever longevity gummies that ignite mitophagy, your body's natural anti-aging pathway. MitoPure is a clinically validated solution backed by over 15 years of research. MitoPure gummies utilize a powerful compound that redefines what's possible for your longevity. MitoPure produces the first ever urolithin A gummies that support your cellular energy so you feel strong, clear, and vibrant. Boost your cellular energy and enhance muscle strength and endurance, all without changing your diet or exercise routine. As someone who loves to stay active, I've noticed a significant boost in my workouts since I started using it. I feel stronger and more energized, and my recovery time has improved dramatically. Better recovery starts at the cellular level. For more information and to order, just go to timeline.com/Hoffman. Use coupon code Hoffman at checkout for 20% off. That's timeline.com/Hoffman for 20% off MitoPure gummies with code Hoffman. Welcome to today's Intelligent Medicine Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Ronald Hoffman. And now for something completely different, because intelligent medicine is the best of both worlds, the best of high-tech medicine, the best of natural therapies. We talk about medical breakthroughs, we talk about lifestyle, but this podcast is a little bit of a different podcast because it's a reflective podcast on something that is a key element of psychology. And it turns out that there is an intersection between psychology and what's happening society-wide. Our society is becoming ever more polarized, ever more bellicose. We are self-censoring. We are fearful of being canceled. And today's guest has a wonderful reflection on this important subject. She is the author of a great book, which is entitled, Can I Say That? Why Free Speech Matters and How to Use It Fearlessly. She's previously been a guest here on Intelligent Medicine with an excellent book entitled Nervous Energy, Harness the Power of Your Anxiety, which was very insightful because we needn't fear anxiety. We need to merely tame it and harness it for better performance. Today's focus will be on her latest book, which is, I guess, just about to be published. Can I Say That? Why Free Speech Matters and How to Use It Fearlessly. And just to clear the air, this is not a book that is sponsored by the Heritage Foundation or by some organization that, seeks to turn down the volume on censoring of free speech. It's not a ringing endorsement of the First Amendment from a political standpoint. It actually has some deep psychological insights on why being able to say your mind, being allowed to exercise your free speech can have a salutary effect on our psyches. So without further ado, here's Dr. Chloe Carmichael. Dr. Chloe, it's a pleasure having you back on Intelligent Medicine. Thanks very much for joining us, and congratulations on your book. Is it just out, or is it just in pre-order?
Well, thank you so much, Dr. Ron. It's really good to be with you again. So the book actually came out in November, but just recently they put it in an audiobook too, which is exciting. So now it's hardback, audiobook, and a Kindle.
And I think this is a very timely book because I think it's important to reflect on why it is so hard to exercise free speech. And this has been an issue. Elon Musk has been in the vanguard of opening up the channels of free speech, getting rid of censorship, like him or not. Depends on where you are on the political spectrum. Whose free speech do you like best? Your own free speech or the other party's free speech? You may want to throttle down somebody else's free speech. So give us a little background on how you came to address this subject. Was it clients who came to see you who were experiencing anxiety around these types of issues?
Yeah, it was a holistic way, actually. It was a combination of ways. So as you mentioned, the rise of cancel culture, everybody feels like they're walking on eggshells. So I was certainly hearing about that from clients. And I also do a fair amount of speaking for corporations and universities. So that issue was being discussed, of course. And at the same time, Google searches for the phrase, how to be authentic have like quadrupled in the last 10 years because people are so nervous of saying the wrong thing. And to be honest, I experienced it myself. I realized that there was a lot that I was holding back, that I was afraid to say. And when I just simply decided to speak out about some stuff that was on my mind in an authentic way, again, not that I'm saying we should have no filter. I think, the book talks about the importance of healthy self-restraint. But to a certain degree, just being able to say, look, here's what I really think about something. When I did that, I realized that my own cognitive process was getting deeper because I was using language to go deeper. And emotional regulation also occurs through language, and social support is more authentic when we're being real with people and when they're being real with us. So to answer your question, it was through clients and even through my own experience that I thought, somebody needs to talk about why freedom of expression is actually good for us.
Indeed. And in the book, you offer a vignette, My Personal Last Straw. So tell us a little bit about how that came about. And actually, I think that this is actually representative of what was the last straw for quite a few people.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think it was a breaking point for a lot of people. So that was the issue of children being masked during COVID. So going back now to 2020 here, of course, we're in 2026 right now, but going all the way back to late 2020, my then 3-year-old son was going to have to be masked if he was going to go for the first time in his life, he was going to go to like a day program as like a preschool. And I didn't want his first experience of being out of the house all day to involve being in a mask where nobody could see his face, and vice versa, because
Right.
The whole point of me sending him there was so he could have social experiences.
Right. And you, as a psychologist, and you study child development, that's very important, facial recognition, studying people's
Yes.
emotional reactions, and even, lip reading is an important part of how the
Exactly.
brain develops its social and linguistic skills.
And feeling seen and affirmed when somebody notices
Yeah.
that a toddler is frowning or smiling, the child feels seen. So I knew that I couldn't do that to him, but I made a drastic move. I had to move to Florida to do that. So to kind
Wow.
of justify it to myself, I wrote out all the reasons why I was concerned about it and ended up sharing the list publicly. And that stimulated a great deal of dialogue, as well as a lot of parents literally all over the world messaging me saying, thank you so much for putting a scientific vocabulary on something that I've just been internally struggling with. So that was just the start of experiencing that, taking a risk and saying what I really thought about something, even if I could be wrong or whatever, but it turning out to have a lot of really good conversations that I thought, wow, how could I, as a psychologist, not have realized and thought about this issue of everybody stuck in cancel culture fears, that it could have a stymieing effect on our emotional and cognitive and social processes.
Well, to some extent, did you take a bit of a professional and personal risk by enunciating that what at the time was a controversial opinion and unpopular in some circles, and for a health professional to make a affirmative statement one way or the other could be a bad career move?
I was terrified. Honestly, I get chills even now. I was terrified. I sent the blog, the list of reasons and whatnot, to a couple of colleagues first, to say, hey, am I missing something here? Is this something really obvious? How come nobody else is saying this? Because am I missing something? And they, to your point, they discouraged me from publishing it. They said, no, everything in here is correct, Chloe, but you should not publish this because it could discourage people from masking their children. And I was like, okay, well, now it's like we're in the twilight zone, that they're agreeing that this could be bad, but yet you shouldn't share it.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, I even this book, even publishing this book about the mental health benefits of free speech, I got dropped by my fancy agent.
Right. It could have you labeled as an agent of the, the vast right-wing conspiracy somehow, because you're a First
Yeah.
Amendment person, and that's associated with libertarianism, and, yeah.
Yeah. Which is why, ironically, why I felt like I needed to just take the plunge and share. Because you're right, free speech has become a politically coded issue, and I don't think it needs to be. And in fact, over different decades, it's even been flip-flopped. It's maybe been coded as a left wing or as a right wing. Neither side of the aisle owns free speech. And again, I want people to recognize this more as a mental health issue about being authentic.
Well, the old rhyme, sticks and stones may break my bones, but words can never hurt me. I use that quite a lot as an antidote to taunts when I was a kid. But words can be hurtful. But we try to step a little bit outside that and say, hey, they're not doing me physical violence. I have an independent view of the world, and I can withstand the brickbats of verbal assaults. So that's actually something that you reflect upon in this book, that we've now come to equate speech with violence in some quarters.
Yeah, absolutely. And, again, I mean, I'm not arguing that people should be mean to each other, right? But I mean, on the other hand, what an anxiety-provoking way to live your life, to think that if somebody says the wrong words to you, it's as if you've been run over by a car. Or on the other hand, to think if, heaven forbid, you should say the wrong words to somebody else, it's like you've, sliced their throat. Honestly, that's how some people are taking what I think is a catchy metaphor, words are violence, or your silence is violence, or whatever. That's fine as a metaphor, but a lot of people are taking that literally, and then they're using it as a cudgel, just in the same way I could absolutely say to you, Dr. Ron, you may not hit me. We can disagree, but you may not hit me. It's then like I would be extending that into saying, and you may not say such and such, or such and such, or express XYZ opinion. I mean, it's actually psychotic as a psychologist, I would say, when people go too far on that, because psychotic, for your listening audience, of course, means that you're out of touch with reality.
It's a logical fallacy in a way.
It's a logical fallacy, but it's also, I think, actually a break in reality.
Delusional.
Yeah, it's a delusion to think that those words, are, quote, threatening your existence or, actual violence. I mean, you and I, as professionals, medical professionals, if somebody tells me that they're going to insult their neighbor, I might think that's mean, but it would be illegal for me to break their confidentiality and call somebody and alert them. But if my patient tells me he's going to beat up his neighbor with a bat, I am legally obligated to do something. Like there's an obvious difference of actual violence, but sometimes people fudge that. And sometimes I think they even do it because it actually can give you a power if you say, well, what you're saying is violence, and therefore you have to stop saying it. Now I can shut you up.
You can gaslight people, in effect, by doing that. What I noticed, and this is just not, I don't see this in your book, perhaps you've reflected on this, but there's a certain speech pattern that a lot of young people have adopted. And it's noticeable to us boomers, perhaps not as noticeable to people who swim in those social circles, but it's what's called uptalk. And it's that inflection at the end of a sentence that almost looks for approval. I can maybe, imitate that, but it's sort of like speaking like this, and hence asking for approval on what you've just said. Question mark, every sentence as if it ends with a question mark. And I wonder if that's a reflection of how socially constrained the younger generation is. Is there a generational gap in terms of these values and expectations?
That is such an interesting question. Yeah. So could the uptalk be reflective of, fears of cancel culture? Well, one thing that's interesting is it's actually oftentimes younger people that are the most likely to participate in cancel culture,
Yes.
right? Because it's kind of it started, I think, somewhat on social media. So I think you're maybe onto something that ironically, it's the same people who are likely to cancel that also have a live by the sword, die by the sword mentality. Like,
Yes.
gee, I could cancel you, but what if I say the wrong thing and you cancel
Yeah.
me?
Yeah. And so there's a lot of self-censorship. You talk about that, but what is self-censorship, and how does that impair one's psyche? What's wrong with that? Maybe we should be exercising restraint. We shouldn't be stepping on other people's toes. We shouldn't offend other people. Understandable.
Yeah. So you said a lot there, which I think is important. We quote shouldn't offend other people, right? I think that would be a tall order, right? Because
Right.
what if the fact that I'm wearing, I'm showing my arms right now, people can't see, but I'm wearing basically a spaghetti strap dress, that could offend some people, right? So I guess I have to accept that I'm going to offend some people. Now, however, the difference between, and there's a section in the book called self-censorship versus healthy self-restraint. And I think that gets at the heart of the matter. So self-censorship is where you are holding back on your values or your beliefs, things that actually matter to you. You're laughing at jokes about a political candidate that you don't think are funny just because you don't want anyone to know that, you feel a certain way about that candidate or that political issue. Healthy self-restraint is, maybe your sister-in-law says, do you like my new haircut? And you say, yeah, it really frames your face, and okay, maybe it's a white lie. Maybe you don't really like it, whatever. Healthy self-restraint, again, is, you sit down to somebody's meal and, you say, well, this is delicious, whereas maybe it's actually not your favorite, whatever.
Right, right.
But self-censorship, we get down to the root of what censors actually are. Back in the Roman times, they had soldiers that were called censors that would ride around the village and tell people, what religion, what political beliefs, et cetera, were acceptable to have. That's the self-censorship, I think, that's like an internal cancer because you're no longer being authentic about something that really matters.
Thanks very much for listening. And now here's an opportunity for one of our sponsors to share an important message with you. So here goes. Listen up.
Kids don't just bring home homework, they bring home germs. And those germs don't just stay with them, they spread to the whole household. That's why Xlear nasal spray was created by a practicing physician to give parents and grandparents peace of mind. You may not think about it, but your nose is filtering out a semi-truck full of air every single day. Xlear isn't just another spray. It creates an additional layer of protection in your nose that blocks bacteria and viruses before they can even take hold. Yes, even that virus. Supporting your body's defenses right where germs first try to enter. Xlear is a hygiene product recommended for daily use, drug-free, non-drowsy, and safe for all ages. Just a quick spray in the morning and evening helps you cleanse your nose. Don't just hope for protection, create it. Get Xlear nasal spray, your daily defense. Xlear nasal spray is available at retailers nationwide and online. Check out xlear.com for our special offers. That's xlear.com.
Thanks for listening. Thanks for supporting our sponsors. They are what make intelligent medicine a continuing free resource to you. And now back to today's guest, Dr. Chloe Carmichael. Do you feel that this can have psychological ramifications? People who self-censor develop anxiety disorders, or the self-esteem suffers. You've seen this in your clinical work?
Totally. Yeah. And the good news is that it works in reverse and in a positive sense.
It can be
people
empowering to express yourself.
Exactly. But I think most people know, say, about repression, suppression, and denial, right? So we start with suppression, where we consciously tell ourselves to shut up, don't say that. And then we do it so often automatically that we repress it. We wouldn't occur to think of it. And then we do that too frequently, we can go into denial, where we're out of touch with even what we really think about something. And of course, that sets people up for anxiety and depression, because the hallmark symptom of depression is the sense of helplessness. And how can we act upon problems if we're, pushing down even our awareness or our thoughts or our feelings about them, or, going into denial? That's, not an effective coping strategy. And the healthy function of anxiety is to stimulate preparation behaviors. And language is really a key tool to all of this. It's how we tap our support network. And when we name emotions, our amygdala begins to downregulate. When we talk to another person authentically, we experience neural coupling with that person and our cortisol levels drop. So it's almost like we're stepping on our air hose when we cut ourselves off from really using our gift of language to truly express ourselves, not just pantomime what we think we should say.
So how do we avoid going from 0 to 60? We shut up, and then finally can't take it anymore. And it's like, wow, go for the jugular. People who have a short fuse and, sit patiently through a political discussion at Thanksgiving, and then abruptly get up and, pull the tablecloth off the table and the dishes come clattering down.
Yeah. Well, I think the first step, and I had to learn this lesson myself, was to take ownership of it, because there were a few issues that I had strong opinions that I was sitting on. And I was which is a passive aggressive thing to do, to smile and nod and act like you agree with people when you don't. And then when you're being passive aggressive, you build up resentment for other people for, not, quote, allowing you to express yourself, when the truth is you haven't even really tried, right? So as you said, there can be this kind of like bursting feeling. And I experienced that myself.
It's like a pressure cooker phenomenon. It's so
exactly
repressed emotions that kind of burst forth.
So one of the things that can be really helpful is to take ownership of the issue, to be able to say to, Aunt Sally at the Thanksgiving table that you've always, smiled and nodded. She thinks you agree with her on everything. Instead of just having an outburst at her, to take ownership and say, you know what, Aunt Sally, I've been holding back my own opinions, not just with you, but with many people, because I've been afraid of, having a political difference. I didn't think people could handle it, or I didn't know how to express it. And so I'm going to start sharing a little bit more authentically. It's not to start a fight with you. In fact, it's to be more real and to be closer with you. But we might discover, that we have some differences, a diversity of opinions, and that's okay.
So, yeah, I think what so often happens is that beliefs, often political beliefs, color one's feeling about other people. And, I was listening into a conversation the other night about a guy who is politically liberal, but he has an employee who's very conservative. But he says that he engages in the most marvelous conversations. They respect one another. And he's learned a lot about issues and about, also self-expression and the proper way to have these discussions and the proper way to frame them without getting overly emotional, by opening himself up to those encounters.
Yeah, I think that's really important. We've been raised so much to think that we shouldn't talk about politics that I feel like we forgot how to do it. And I think also we have to remember, again, the root of the word politics basically just means the public life, the shared space, that the community that we live in. And for high functioning people, which I'm sure 100% of your listeners are, just driven, intelligent people that think about the world around them, of course they're going to have opinions about whether it be, immigration issues or, abortion issues or, what's going on overseas or, how to handle violent crime or, education. All these things are things that high functioning people who care about their communities think about. And so to have this kind of arbitrary rule that we just don't talk about these things, I think might be setting us up, ironically, for more conflict, because language, again, is one of our key tools for navigating conflict and for learning how to even have a healthy separation between our ideas and ourselves, to be able to have language external from us and have dialogue with other people. And when we stop that in the name of, quote, politeness, I think ironically we're increasing the tension.
Well, so explain from a psychological standpoint, how does language act as kind of a circuit breaker for emotionality and anger, bitterness, frustration, etc.
Yeah. Well, let me explain it this way. Most people will understand very intuitively that if I'm working with a violent offender, the first thing I want to do is teach him to use his words, right? Or when we have toddlers,
Or
we
with
teach
toddlers,
them,
it's like, the kid's
yeah,
like, melting down. It's like, what is it? Use your words.
use
I
your
hear that so
words.
commonly when I'm around young parents. These use your
Exactly.
words, express it. And then the crying stops, the grievance is expressed, and things tend to settle down.
Exactly. And when people come to therapy, even it's a huge part of the work is to just take what's inside and learn how to get it outside of themselves. And even the word express it, it's like it's a physical thing that we're, kind of getting out of ourselves. And so when we can do that with other people, we're starting to emotionally regulate ourselves with that other person. We're demonstrating to the other person that, we can hear them. There's tools in the book for speaking up, but there's also a lot of tools in the book for learning to listen. Because if we want to have truly open dialogue, to answer your question, like, how does that work? How does dialogue really, help us emotionally? It's a two-way street. It's not just about one person talking. It also involves when the other person is expressing their opinion that's different from yours. When you have the floor and you just recap their opinion back to them respectfully and you say, okay, just want to make sure I understand. You believe A, B, and C for reasons X, Y, and Z. Is that right? And then maybe ask them a question like, well, I'm just curious. Did you ever feel differently, or was this how you've always felt? And then you're becoming curious and showing that you're interested in them. And then they're going to show that they're interested in you. And what you're doing then is you're creating a truly safe space. A truly safe space, which is what regulates us, is one that can withstand disagreement, not one where people have to always just pretend that they agree with each other.
You talk about the weight test. So is it, appropriate for people to think before they speak in some instances and kind of get emotionally grounded before they salvo?
Yeah, I mean, some people love to just share off the cuff, and that's fine. But for some people, especially if you've been holding back a lot, it can be helpful to do the weight test. It's WAIT. So the W is to just ask yourself in the first place, do I want to share this? Like, I'm not saying we should feel compulsively obligated to tell everybody all of our, beliefs. So if you're around with the soccer moms and they're all talking about Roe v. Wade, like everybody sees it one way and you see it a different way, don't feel like you have to say something. But if you notice it's like really standing out and you feel yourself kind of activated, ask yourself, do I maybe want to speak up here? And then the A is for appropriate. Like, is this the appropriate time and place to speak up? You don't want to burst it on somebody like at, just right before you walk into a party necessarily or whatever. And the I is for inoculate, which again can be helpful. I'm not saying people should do it, but for people that are scared about opening up, the inoculate is maybe you're with those soccer moms and you just give a little bit. You just say, well, girls, I guess, there's different ways of seeing it. So it's good to hear what you all think. You're just dropping a little breadcrumb that maybe you see the issue differently. You don't have to go whole hog and tell everybody everything, and just see how they respond to that. Maybe even give it a week or two. See if you suddenly get uninvited to the barbecue, or see if maybe somebody even invites you to share more. Just see how it feels to you even to have shared a little bit. And then the T is for trust. To, for example, if you're out with your frenemy from the workplace for drinks, maybe you don't trust that person enough, and maybe you're wise to not necessarily give that person too much private information about your views.
Yeah, especially in a work situation, there's strategic concerns about the degree of sharing that can occur in those settings. Okay, great start to our discussion. You've laid down the groundwork for our discussion about your fantastic book. What a great idea. I think it actually is unprecedented that somebody is writing about this because, we hear a lot about First Amendment, but nobody, I think, is tackling it the way you tackle it, which is from a psychological standpoint. The book is entitled, Can I Say That why free speech matters, not just in the Jeffersonian conception of free speech, but from the standpoint of psychiatric and psychological hygiene. I think it's part of brain hygiene, how to use it fearlessly. The author, our guest, Dr. Chloe Carmichael, who is a clinical psychologist here in New York. You want to give people a heads up on how to find you?
Yeah, sure. If you go to freespeechtoday.com, it'll take you to my website where you can see all my books at freespeechtoday.com. It's also on Amazon and anywhere that books are sold.
Okay, great stuff. When we return, I got more questions. I'm Dr. Ronald Hoffman, and this is the Intelligent Medicine Podcast.